Are you a lone wolf estate agent or are you a team player? Today, I'm joined by the wonderful Roger Black, who is a former Olympian, both at 400 meters solo and as a relayer. Roger, in estate agency, there are very selfish estate agents who will grab everything, won't be a team player, but at the same time, you need those sort of people to drive the business. How do you balance between being a team player and an individual?
Great question, and it's interesting because a lot of people choose athletics as a sport because for most athletes it is an individual sport. I mean, you've got a team around you, but when you're on the track, I ran the 400 meters, as you said, and 90% of my time was training and focusing to perform as an individual. I look back over my career, you'll be judged on your individual performance. So my Olympic silver medal is probably my greatest achievement. But I'm a two-time world champion in the 4x400 meter relay. I didn't really focus on that. But when it came round, absolutely, I was all in. And what I loved about it was that, and what I do believe is that I think, yes, some people can say I'm a better individual. Oh, no, I am an individual. And some people say I am a team player. But I think really high performers in sport recognize that there's a time to be an individual and there's a time to be a team player. And those hats have to come off maybe if you're going to move into the next one. And that was definitely the case in the 4x400 meter relay, because you've actually got four guys who have been trying to beat each other all year, and they're asked to come together as a happy team. But we recognise that we could only achieve become world champions if we're able to put our egos to one side and really put a different mindset on the table. And we did do that, and it wasn't just what we did in training. It's what we did off the track as well. We literally would spend a lot of time together, leading up to the race, and we had I loved being part of a relay. I mean, one of the reasons I didn't do athletics as a kid.
Because some of the people, as I said,
I loved it.
Some of the people in your team, you were fighting.
Yeah,
fighting
absolutely.
The wrong word, but...
Well, no, absolutely. I mean, the two most successful teams. The most famous team was a team in 1991, which is slightly different because Chris Akabusi was a hurdler, John Regis was a sprinter. It was just me and Derek Redmond. But the team that the world champions in '97, we were all competitors. I mean, you and Thomas, Mark Richardson, Jamie Bolch, myself, absolutely competitors. But we were able to be friends, and we still are friends. And it's really important, because if you can't do that, the whole team will fail. And I've witnessed that as well, where four world-class individuals on paper should be the best team in the world, and they can't even medal because they just can't work together.
Who was that?
Well, I would argue that was the sprint relay team back then.
What, the British one?
Yeah, I think they struggled. I mean, John Regis was in both teams. He said it's a completely different ballgame. I mean, it's a completely different experience.
So there's a bants and laughter and...
Yeah. I mean, look, what helps, we're going to break down team dynamics. You've got to have some foundation and leadership within a good team. And you've got to have that respect for that team and leadership. And we had that. Myself and Chris Akabusi had the respect as world performers, but also we've been around a long time. We were the sort of nucleus of that team. Also, big personality in Chris Akabusi, but just guys who respected each other. I mean, and I think that's the thread. You've got to have a bit of leadership, not a lot, bit of leadership, bit of camaraderie. But the most important thing is if you don't believe that you can achieve far more together as a team by collaborating together than if you just try and be individuals and come together and hope. If you don't believe in that one premise, then you can't fulfill your potential as a team. So it's all about ego, actually. It's all about putting the ego to one side.
Okay, that's all the good things about being in a team. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but wasn't there Olympics or World Championships where you came in second, but you've now been given the gold medal?
We had 1997. We came in second on the day and were given retrospective gold medals, not physically, but in the record books, because two of the Americans were found to be taking drugs. So that was hard because...
the reason I've asked that is a lot of estate agents lose a listing to a competitor because they've overpromised.
Sure.
And a lot of agents, that drags them down, and their ego doesn't allow them to nurture that homeowner constantly. Now, I know there's been a big 20-year gap between, but how did you feel that, you know, you weren't on that, you were on the silver pedestal.
Yeah.
How did you,
How do I feel? The, 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 the thing is, we are so focused on performing at that one moment in time that, you know, and if you stand at the top of the podium, which I have done, and you share that with 3 other people, it's an amazing feeling. We didn't get that. We still did all right, but we didn't get that sharing being world champions. I had got it in earlier in 1991. The other 3 didn't, so I think it hurt them a lot more than it hurt me. And then then a few years later, you find out actually been promoted to gold medal. We still haven't been given the medals. That's another story. We're hopefully going to be given them soon. It's a long time. And there is a sense that it was taken away from us. That moment was taken away from us. But the truth is, as an athlete, you kind of move on. Okay, you just move on to the next season, and you don't hold it because it's not going to help you.
because that's what a lot of estate agents, they hold on to that.
Yeah,
They lost the listing.
you know, controlling your emotion is a big thing, and I'm not saying it's a good thing. You know, I reflect now on my life as an athlete, and I think it's not conducive to a particularly empathetically emotional person, because you're so programmed to move on to the next race. You're so programmed to move on to the next season. And you're quite narcissistic because by definition, you know, you kind of need to be. So,
How do you switch that off though?
you switch it off in the off season, and then you switch it on because you know that you kind of have to be like that. But I think okay, I'll tell you what it is. Ultimately, we logically know that there are only 3 medals up for grabs: gold, silver, bronze, and then the rest. Okay. We all want to win the gold, and if not the gold, the silver, and the bronze. But actually, and I learned this in 1996, my greatest year, and it freed me up. Actually, it freed me up mentally to be the best athlete I could be. I defined in my own head what success was, and it wasn't necessarily beating Michael Johnson, because I probably couldn't have done. He could have aged, he didn't. But I learned to focus on what I call my perfect race. And when I crossed the line in Atlanta, it came second. And there were some really good guys behind me, by the way. I knew deep in my soul I couldn't have run any better. And I think all athletes will tell you this, that if you can walk off that track knowing that you did everything to make it as likely as possible that you would fulfill your potential on that day, it's okay. It may hurt. So my friend Steve Backley, it really hurt, because he threw an Olympic record in Sydney, and then in the last round he got pipped and came second. It was an incredible performance. You know, he didn't underperform physically. Someone else took that medal from him, and it really hurt him. Now it doesn't hurt him as much, because in reflection, he's realised that, you know, you can't control the outcome. All you can control is being prepared to make it as likely as possible that you fulfil your potential. But ultimately in sport, and all sports people know this, when it comes down to it, we don't have any control. Because as Mike Tyson once said, something along the lines of, everyone can be a great boxer until someone punches you in the face. So
you're so right, and it's the same in estate agency, Roger. Is that a lot of estate agents focus on the outcome of getting the listing, when in reality, what we should be doing is focusing on the process to get the listing.
Absolutely, and the process is everything, because if you skip the process, it's unlikely that you're going to be able to achieve the outcome. And you know, the best people in sport for history, they have a lot of things in common. Talent, obviously, hard work, obviously, blah, blah, blah. But there's another thing they have in common. They revel in the process. You know, why do you think someone like a Johnny Wilkinson would be out on the pitch until the lights went out practicing his kick, and David Beckham, you know, all the top performers? They love the process because they respect the process, because you can't just turn up in the Olympic Games without doing the process. And I think if you try and do that in a estate agency, you're winging it. You might get lucky, but on the whole, if success is a sustainable performance level, then it all comes down to the process. Do the process, and then be mentally, that's it. You know, you've got to do the process. You've got to do the stuff. You can't get away with it.
And it's the same in estate agency.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time today, Roger.
Thank you.